The Deputy Minister of Transport, Minister Mangcu, is leading a delegation to the International Transport Forum in Germany, and he was part of a roundtable discussion about how transport can be transformed to reduce carbon emissions. Well, from Leipzig in Germany, we're joined by Deputy Transport Minister Minister Mangcu. Minister, thank you for being with us. I understand the forum wrapped up today. How was it?
Thank you very much to you and your viewers. Thank you for the opportunity. The sessions were very enlightening. I believe that it was a success in the form that although we are not a voting member, we are an observer, but we are able to participate in roundtables, as you've rightfully said, and a lot of exchanges amongst about 50 ministers and deputy ministers of transport across the world, ranging from enabling sustainable economies discussions, reduction or decarbonizing transport were amongst the decisions. So in my view, it was a success and we have lessons we have taken away.
Did you feel vulnerable at all coming from South Africa? Because I understand this was a forum looking at the future, about sustainability, about decarbonization. But here in South Africa, we're often looking back. How was it allowed to happen that the rail lines in many parts have been taken apart? Why are there so many trucks on the road as a result? So it feels like we have to play a lot of catch up before we can look to a carbon-free or carbon-reduced future.
Certainly, I agree. We keep on having to look back. But our position is that we cannot look at ourselves and feel pity for ourselves. We must be part of the discussion of what the future holds while we are fixing the challenges that we have. We also are of the view that the European Union countries, or European countries in particular, have got a major role to play in shaping policies and direction of the future in reducing carbon emissions. Therefore, we believe that Europe cannot talk to itself alone. We have to be part of this discussion, whilst we acknowledge the challenges you've just highlighted, but we must also lift our eyes and look into the future so that we can close the gap. So,
is there any takeaway? Were you inspired by any initiatives, any of the discussions that we can bring home and make practical somehow here in South Africa?
Amazingly, the majority of the member states were very excited by having us being part of the discussion, because they also agree that they cannot be talking to themselves to solve the problems. The takeaway, for instance, is to see how we can learn from them in terms of their policies already that they have in terms of regulating electronic motor vehicles. An example is that they have seen an increase in road crashes because electric vehicles are very quiet and people do not hear them. So they are processing legislation that requires that electric vehicles should have a sound, at least, that they are determining how much, so that people can hear it. It's something that we are taking away because we are also in the process of developing our own electronic motor vehicle guidelines and policies. In regards to the shift from road to rail, they are also struggling with the same issues. However, their challenge is not infrastructure, but the capacity of the infrastructure. So what are they doing? They are looking at increasing the uptake of private sector or concessions on the rail. This is what our rail policy, which we have just approved, is speaking to. So we are able to learn how do they run this. Many countries do not just run the infrastructure. Certain areas, infrastructure is run by private sector. In other countries, they run the infrastructure and private sector runs the actual service, either freight or passenger. So those are the lessons as we develop our own policies in line with the rail policy. we are able also to look at what works for us and be able. But lastly, is that as they get into electronic motor vehicles, the question that must be asked, which we are asking, what happens to those vehicles that are running on combustion engines? We don't want those vehicles to be dumped into our shores because it takes us even further back. So our presence here, therefore, means that we are able to influence their decisions into what happens to their second-hand vehicles as they roll out these new EMV vehicles.
All right, very interesting. I hope we can chat about that in future. Maybe those cars will be cheap, but yes, do we want them? Thank you, Deputy Transport Minister Minister Mangcu.